Hello, and welcome to the Reset Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Mignell, and this is part of my 29 Days of Magic series, where I interview a really awesome Black woman a day for the entire month of February for Black History Month. And in this episode, I am so delighted to have Deneen Andrades, who is a perspective expert, international speaker, and a mind power coach. She has an incredible story. It's going to be a great conversation. Take a listen. Hey, Deneen.
Hey Laura, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you for asking.
Great. So, as you probably know, the podcast has the first question always the same, and I'm sure you'll have a great answer. So, Deneen, what was your first job?
My first job was an accountant. I was an accounts
Uh,
payable clerk. Not
okay.
something that was the most fun for me, but something that I could certainly do. I was in high school still, so
So you were an accountant in high school? How is that legal?
because
Oh
I
my gosh,
was an
not.
intern.
Are you sure about that? You were
I was
paid to be an
accounting.
accountant. Ah, I
I
got it.
was yes, paid to be an accounting clerk
Uh-huh.
at a very reputable oil company. It was Arco, Atlantic Richfield Oil Company. I was in high school. I had finished most of my credits, and so I had almost a complete day that was empty because I only had one course a day at this point on my senior year in high school, and my counselor was fantastic in being proactive and putting me to work. So off to Atlantic Richfield Companies I went as an accounting clerk in accounts payable. Paid, I might add, not an
I was gonna say,
intern.
like, it sounds like you got paid for this job.
I did. That was the great part.
That's pretty awesome. So, you start off as a teenage accountant and you now become a mind power coach. What was that career journey like?
That was definitely pretty interesting. That starting out as an accounting clerk was just something to fill the time. Honestly, I'm not even sure I knew what I really wanted to do when I was in high school. What I did know though is that innately for me, I always wanted to help people do better, be better, feel better. It's something I did in my family, with friends, all kinds of things like that. I'm always there with an encouraging word, always there looking to help people try something new, look at something a different way. I didn't know though at the time that I would be able to actually turn that into a business. So what I did was decide, oh, okay, I don't know how I can do that, but I know that I can take some computer classes, right, in college, and I will be able to take that and make money with that. And if I go into healthcare, then I'll really be able to help people, right? So
Right.
for me, it all kept coming back to being able to help people. So I went into healthcare after, taking courses in college and so forth. And that was really great for me for a while. I learned a ton. Um, Learning a ton means I learned all about different conditions. I learned about mental health, something that was pretty much taboo to talk about. But as I was learning, it started to make sense to me why people did certain things and why they thought certain ways. And most of those ways were limiting. And that is when I realized that's actually what I was trying to help people get through. That, I have to tell you, was
Wow.
like a huge aha moment for me because that was when I realized, oh, I can actually make a business out of this. I can do things to help people besides design systems that are easy for nurses to use, right? I can do all of these other things like help with people's mindset. and help removing those limiting beliefs and help lift them to that next level of success for themselves and the next level after that and the next level after that. Now, it wasn't that I just had this fantastic idea and thought, okay, I'm just going to do this, right? I'm growing myself. So I'm also learning. I'm taking courses, I'm reading books, I'm going to seminars, and I'm living life, right? And part of what was happening in my life was I came to a point where I actually felt what some of these other people that I wanted to help were feeling. So I went through those things myself. And what happened was there was a series of deaths in my family that impacted me greatly. And I don't mean just a little bit. I mean that I was in a depression at one point, which I talk about in my book, Learning to Pivot Master, where I felt like elephants were sitting on top of me, literally, because that was the strength I felt like I did not have. I felt like I didn't have clarity of any kind. And what had happened for me is that the eldest member of my family had passed away. And literally, while I was packing to go and arrange his funeral, because I was his power of attorney for lots of things, the guy that I was dating also passed away. And this was within 2 days of each other.
Oh, wow.
Literally, I'm hearing that the eldest member of my family was, and I'm doing air quotes here, missing. And the guy that I was dating was missing. So now I'm flying off to find out about my great uncle, who was the eldest member of my family at the time. And I am also looking at, okay, what am I going to need to do, or what do I need to know about the guy that I was dating? Now, I say that I was dating because we were not engaged, but we were very close. I knew his family very well, to the point where when they were looking for things, they actually were calling me where certain things were for him, legal documents and so forth. So not just someone that, I had been recently seeing or anything like that, someone I truly loved and cared about. And that type of thing kept happening and kept happening. And I don't mean like I was losing a person in my family to death. I mean, it kept being in multiples. And the
Wow.
feeling that I got with that, like I said, it was actual depression. And at first, I had no idea what had hit me. And it was my mom that was like, "You're depressed, get up, go see a doctor, right? Go see a psychiatrist." And of course, that sounds good, right? But the reality for me was what got me up out of the bed was I heard my cousin who was talking to my mom, and she was in tears because no one had ever seen me like that before, including me, of course, because she didn't know what to do to try and make things better for me. And of course, she wanted to, everyone wanted to, but no one knew how, including me. But what moved me forward was my desire to feel better and do better because I realized the horrible impact I was having on the people that loved me. And that was part two of my recognition that I'm doing what I do today because of how much I care for others. So I did finally get up. I started started reading. I went to the employee assistance program, because they would send you to a psychiatrist so you could talk to someone about grieving and so forth. And that works for some, but it didn't quite work for me because I didn't feel understood. Because when you start talking about, one instance after another of losing loved ones, at some point, people's brain just kind of explodes, right? They're like, uh, how did you handle that? Or what? I can't even think like that, right? And I totally understand that because I couldn't think like that, which is why I went into the depression, right? I just couldn't. So while I was working my way out of it, I came to the realization that the case would be I personally would have to work myself out of it. No one else was going to be able to pull me out, pull me through anything like that. So I had to hunker down, right? And in my hunkering down, in my reading, in my talking to different ones, in my introspection, I realized that I was going to have to find some type of process. And I personally am that type of person. I'm going to look for step one. I'm going to look for step two. Now, as I say this, remember, we are drawing on the skills that I learned in my computer systems classes, right? I'm looking for step one. I'm looking for step two. If step three doesn't exist, I'm going to create it because I'm determined to move forward. I am determined not to stay in the bed, not to continue to lose weight because I wasn't eating, all of the things that sometimes happen with people when they go into a depression. I was absolutely determined to stop the bleed, if you will, from my family hurting. They were hurting enough with all of the loss. They didn't need to have me contribute to that. I needed to be able to come out of that. So with that, I actually started putting together my 7 stages of hope, which was how I started out. And through that, that was how I started to get myself out. Number one, just going to talk about three of those at the moment, but number one was to pivot. And what I mean by pivot is literally take a second look, turn away for a second and take a second look. And when you take that second look, try to find something that is productive or useful in that situation. And so for me, with my uncle, for instance, it was really, really hard. The one that was the oldest member of the family, it was really, really hard because some would say, well, he was at that age, he lived a good life.
Right.
I didn't want to hear any of that.
Exactly. Like, no,
I didn't
listen,
want to hear
listen, I totally get it. Like, that means nothing.
right. I didn't want to hear that. So what I did have to think about was that he got immediate medical attention, right? He wasn't laying there suffering. As a matter of fact, when I got there, he lived in Indianapolis at the time. When I got there, he was in the hospital, actually. We had an arrangement where if he needed to go to the hospital, he would call them, he would call me, or the hospital would call me, and then I would go there to be with him. Well, somehow the phone call to me never happened, but he did make it to the hospital, which I got to see immediately when I walked in the door because the paramedics had moved things out of the way, furniture out of the way to get the gurney out. And yes, I did talk to the doctor. When he came in, he was still alive. It wasn't like he was found or anything. So I was even happy about that. Oh, thank goodness, that he wasn't there, deceased for days and no one knew
No, I
that
know.
he was there. So I had that part, to hold on to. There's always memories, right? And those are good, but I found those helped me later. I needed something to hold on right now, right?
Exactly.
Right now. And so it was the immediate medical attention. It was the fact that he did call the ambulance for himself. It was the fact that he had actually left me a note. So I had that to fall back on. I know that not everyone has such a thing, but there are things that when we pivot, when we take that second look with that new perspective and that fresh set of eyes, that we can see that we didn't see before if we just maintain focus on the actual event. And one example of that is trauma surgeons. We see them on TV all the time, right? They go in, they have their hands up, they have their gloves on, they peek through the window, they turn their back, and they go into the operating room, right? You've seen that before?
Of course.
Okay. Did you know that they're actually doing that to get a fresh perspective? That it's not
Ah,
about yes, it's not about keeping their hands clean. It's about looking at a fresh perspective, because when they first peer through that window, they could very easily see a mangled mess, right? You could see bones exposed, you could see parts missing, you could see the person open already, exposures, I should say, where there should not be any.
right.
And so if they were to continue to focus on that, they wouldn't be able to see all of the other things that may be wrong, and they wouldn't be able to appropriately prioritize care for that particular person. So that little pivot that they do is all about giving them a new perspective. And when I learned that, and there were many different trauma surgeons that told me that, everything from military to those that are in corporate and commercial, that I was so amazed that perspective played that much of a role in the work that they were doing in healthcare. So even though I started out in all of these other places, right, it all brought me some sort of skill, knowledge, learning that I could use in helping myself and others to move forward and be their best selves in the face of these, dare I say, challenges, but in the face of these challenges.
Wow. And so now that's become like your job to help folks be able to focus. Like, how'd that come? Like, what's that been like for you?
That has been fantastic. On that particular thing, I also have worked with mentors and coaches, right? We had taken courses. You always have to learn, right? I have to put things into a nice, neat package as opposed to just spewing out, these bits and pieces that I learned. Although, of course, in class, you're all happy and you kind of tell everything. But I started taking additional courses. So I took courses to learn neurolinguistic programming or NLP. I took courses to learn hypnotism. I took courses to learn all about understanding limiting beliefs, where they're coming from, age groups, mental health, and then I actually started working with my own mentors to be able to teach and show. Very experiential experience
Mhm.
because it was all about the doing, right? First, I was paired up with someone. I got to be someone's coach, and I got to be the client because, of course, not just experiencing it in class, but experiencing it in real life. And then being the coach for someone else, that was where you got to see, and for me, this was the greatest part, where you got to see people get forward momentum. And then I needed to hone in on my message, and I needed to hone in on how to deliver my message. So then I worked with Mr. Les Brown to understand that, because he is the top of his game, right? And he's been the top for years when it comes to motivational speaking, when it comes to teaching, when it comes to speaking from stage and things like that. So I had him, and still do have him as a mentor as well. And so he, along with what is now called success training, were really and truly my foundation for moving forward with actually turning this into a business. And then I worked with others because there were parts of the business I didn't quite understand. So someone else you're going to have on, Karen Donaldson of Karen Donaldson Inc. I also worked with her on some of the business aspects that I wasn't quite prepared for, because that wasn't my business. I had been in corporate and other entrepreneurial things that I had tried before were very different than this space of coaching and public speaking. And think about some of the big names out there, the Tony Robbins, the Marissa Peers, people like that. And those were some of the ones that I was looking to emulate, though my message was definitely a different one.
Amazing. So, you've gotten to do all this great work and help so many people. What do you do for Deneen? What do you do for your self-care?
I definitely have self-care time, first of all. I say definitely because I put it on my calendar. And for me, that is step one. Remember, I'm all about process, right? If I don't schedule it, it's not going to happen.
Right.
So I actually schedule the time. Sometimes it will be a spa day. Sometimes it will be what I call a mental health day, which is where all I'm basically doing is only what I want outside, right? I live in sunny Southern California. So going to the beach, even in the wintertime, just to hear the waves and feel the breeze helps me a lot. I won't get in the water because the Pacific Ocean is very cold in the winter right now.
Understood, understood.
Right. However, there are all kinds of other things, like there are floats that I can do where they're using seawater for you to float because of the salt content, right? There are other things that I've done before where it has been, I've taken a half day because I was doing a meditation retreat, that type of thing. And speaking of meditation, part of my daily ritual for myself on that self care is I will do a short meditation before I get out of bed every morning, before my feet even hit the floor.
Oh, I do that too.
Yes. And it will include three things that I'm grateful for, three things that I plan to accomplish that day. And I will also do this breathing exercise to wake my brain up, right? And get me ready for the day. So by the time my feet hit the floor, I already feel like I'm winning. And for me, that's my everyday self-care thing. If I need, because we are in front of our computers often. all day and for long periods of time, right? Sometimes I need to just get up and walk away, give myself a new perspective, come back and see things a little differently, and give
Right.
my eyes a break. Give my eyes a break as well. Because the funny part about looking at your computer screen, on your laptop, is you'll do that. And what's the first thing you do before you stand up out of your chair? Pick up your phone that has another screen on it. Right? So we're back to really need to schedule time for yourself to do nothing if that's it, or be pampered, whatever you feel is pampering for you. And like I said, for me, sometimes it's a spa day, sometimes it is just getting my nails done, mani pedi, or getting my
Love
hair
it.
done, because because who
Same.
doesn't like a fresh do, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
Awesome. So you've done all this amazing work, and I'm sure that you probably have an amazing give and or ask of the audience.
I do. One of the things that I'd like to ask of the audience is that try the meditation, make it a journal in the morning, 3 things you're grateful for, and 3 things you plan to accomplish that day. You will be surprised how good it makes you feel to be able to know that you have specific things that you are looking to accomplish, as opposed to simply being a slave to your schedule. So that's number one. Number
Yeah,
two, yep. Number
I actually do
two,
that. I do the three things you're grateful for every day.
that's fantastic. And do you find that it lifts your spirits
It
just
absolutely
thinking about
does.
the
Honestly, it absolutely does.
yes. And that's part of why I consider that self-care for myself, because I'm already in good spirits before my feet have hit the floor out of the bed. So I love that. The second thing is, as I said, I am a coach, public speaker as well, and a perspectives expert. I can be reached at www.deneen360.com. All of my social media is in one place at that 360. So that's www.deneen360.com to reach out to me to see if we can work together in coaching or speaking, because there are so many things that we can do to help others to be the best version of themselves. And not just the best version, it's the next version, your next best version, because we're always improving.
Exactly. We are always improving. I think that's the message for everybody, that like it's never just a one-off. Like there's always going to be a better and better version. We're always have to be constantly improving. You're never going to be perfect. There's a great quote I heard from a Broadway actor when he won a Tony, and he's like, when you get to the top of a mountain, that's just the base of the next mountain. It's just to keep going forward and pushing forward. And I think that's just, we have to keep remembering that in everything that we do.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And that's why we're saying the next best version, the next best version, because we're always improving. There will, like you said, there will never be perfection, and that's okay, because we can enjoy the journey and enjoy where we are because we know we've done something to better ourselves each time.
Oh, absolutely. Deneen, you are just so chock full of awesome wisdom. I mean, my goodness. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing it with our audience. And we'll put all the details in the show notes so folks can connect with you and read about you and connect and hopefully get coached by you. So thank you so much for being a part of 29 Days of Magic.
Thank you so much for the invitation. You have made this wonderfully easy, and I appreciate you offering your platform for us to shine.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And that is our show.